All right, Sisters fans, we're talking Season 3, Episode 9, entitled Complicated Situations. And it's kind of odd, and maybe this is my own fault, because I watched the episode, around 1 a.m., and I didn't think it was that bad. But then I made the mistake of going on Twitter and reading what other people were saying about it, and I went into the Facebook group, and I'd say that the complaints are consistent, but for me personally, there was one particular moment that as soon as a particular scene ended, I was like, are we really doing this again? And I'm referring to the Zach and Fatima scene. But then when I was reading tweets and whatnot and going back through my notes, I'm like, yeah, there were some other things that just didn't make sense. And and not to sound like the show in regards to repetitive dialogue and situations, I really feel like Tyler could at least use a consultant to check the scripts, because I feel like despite doing all the writing and directing for Sisters himself, there's an extreme lack of continuity. And I was talking with a couple people prior to doing this review just to make sure I was on the right track, because I remember yesterday when I posted my overview, I said I watched the scene a couple of times where Priscilla is chewing out Sam, and she said something about not having sex for a year. Then a couple people in the comments like, no, Jeremy, she said like 2 or 3 months, but even if it was a year, I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why I discussed this episode with some people prior to doing the review. That way, if I had any complaints, then I knew I wasn't tripping. I knew what I was talking about. So I feel for me, just seeing that, I'm assuming these characters are supposed to be late 20s, early 30s, give or take. And I know there are some people in real life who are, at that particular age group and still emotionally immature. But I just cannot see how long this show can last. And I get it. Some people look at Sisters with a little bit less of a stricter, I guess you could say, continuity or level of quality as an oval or haves and have-nots in regards to storytelling. But this show is supposed to be about relationships and, pretty much the early 2020 version of Girlfriends. But at least in Girlfriends, there was character progression. Sure, some characters like Lynn, it might have taken them a while to change, but even so, they made different moves in their lives during the course of the series, but at the core, they were still the same person. Which isn't a bad thing per se, but at least you can tell they were trying to do something different. With Sisters, I just feel like each and every episode, are we really supposed to believe that these characters are just so, and I hate to use the word dumb, but so dumb that they would just do certain things? I mean, there's a difference between a character doing something because they're caught between a rock and a hard place versus a character making a very dumb decision just for the sake of the plot to move forward. And I feel like Tyler Perry, I wouldn't say has lost his touch, but I feel like he's kind of turned a blind eye and just want to put out an episode. So originally I was going to score this episode about a 7 out of 10, but looking back and thinking about different things, I'm like, yeah, that didn't make any sense. I'll score it about a 4 out of 10. It did have a couple of moments, but overall, it just had a lack of consistent quality as well as story continuity, because I feel like you could probably skip 4 episodes, come back, and the show is pretty much exactly where it left itself, because even when it seems like some progress or some form of progression is being made within a character in terms of their personality or what they're doing in their lives, somehow, some way, it just goes back to square one a few episodes later. It's just ridiculous. So sorry for this almost like 5-minute introduction, but I just wanted to set the stage for this review. And I get it. It's like, well, Jeremy, if you don't like the show, don't review it. Nah, I just want to see where it goes. I got to see my boo Jasmine again eventually, right? So Gary confronts Andy and Robin at the restaurant, and we learn, well, I think we already knew this, but Robin is from New York and he lives in London, but this was a dinner meeting, and Robin was pretty smooth because he pretty much had Andy's back the entire time, basically, I guess you could say, representing her honors. Like, yeah, man, it's like, You're the fiance. She's been talking about you all night. It's like you're lucky to have somebody who's in love with you, like Andy, because, you know, she has been talking about you all night. And Gary pretty much, you know, is interrogating the situation. Like, you know, why couldn't you do this at work? And, well, yeah, we were actually supposed to meet at a restaurant at the hotel I'm staying at. But in respect of you, because it was the girls' night, she decided to relocate here for this brief meeting, and then she'll go back to her girls. Okay. So basically from there, you know, Gary just gets up and leaves after he agrees that he and Andy will talk about this at home. And Andy is visibly shaken, and, you know, Robin keeps asking, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And it's like, obviously she's not, but Robin just decides, you know what, let's just talk about this at the office tomorrow, because you're not in the, you know, right state. Because there's a difference between business mode Andy, you know, I've always praised the badass Andy we see in the law office, versus the weird Andy we see around Gary. In a way, Andy's kind of like Jeffrey from the Haves and the Have-Nots, especially if you go back to the early seasons where, you know, Jeffrey was, if you subtract the whole crush on his patient Wyatt thing, Jeffrey is an effective psychologist therapist, yet whenever he's around his mother, he turned into like a 4-year-old. So basically the same thing kind of rings true of Andy, where she's effective in her career, but whenever she's around Gary, aka her version of Veronica, she turns into this, like, you know, kind of just an incompetent, just little girl. Well, then again, little girl, that doesn't sound like, you know, the right thing to say for fiance, well, whatever. But in any case, she agrees, and he says, yeah, this is a great excuse for me to see you again. So, you know, he gets up and leaves and, you know, pays the tab. From there, the girls confront Andy about the situation, because, you know, they're staring. It's like, wait, was that Gary just now? Yeah, that was Gary. He looked pretty mad. Yeah, he did. Karen pretty much is taking a Danny route in regards to, well, you know what? Hey, she got to learn. So Andy comes over there and quote unquote explains what happened with Gary, because you know how whenever something major goes down, she tries to play it off like nothing. It was no big deal. He came over, Robin and I explained what's going on, and we'll talk about it at home. And from there, Andy pretty much, you know, decides, yeah, I think it's best for me to leave right now. And, it's kind of funny because Karen calls her out about the situation. Like, it's kind of interesting because you're dressing up all cute in the same way you did when you first met Gary. And it's like, no, I always dressed up like this for girls' night. And then, you know, of course, they had to make a nod to Danny and the way she was dressing, in the sense of, I guess you could say, oh, something must be going wrong with rodeo if you're dressed up like that. So from there, Andy leaves to go home, and then the girls just decide, yeah, I guess it's time to go too, because Karen once again wanted to confront Andy about the lawsuit, but again, Andy just kind of brushes it off like, you know what, don't worry, this lawsuit, I'll deal with it. It's okay. Don't worry about it, and then I'll handle it. So Danny asks Karen, why didn't you say anything? And Sabrina says, do you think we should go to Andy's? And Karen's like, nope, she has to learn on her own, even if it's the hard way. And yet again, this is just the same old, where Karen was brought there to apologize to Andy because apparently she was in the wrong for walking out of the marriage and everything. Yet at the same time, these same girls flipped the script as soon as Karen pulled out the lawsuit, and then they learned about the whole shooting and whatnot. And all of a sudden it's like, Karen, why didn't you do anything? Well, because just like Danny, anytime somebody says anything that goes against Andy's wishes, apparently she's the wicked witch of the girls group, the sisters group, and she should be cast out. But as soon as the other two girls learn that, wait a minute, Andy, this such and such thing happened, then all of a sudden the wicked witch is brought back into the fold, and it's like, wait, you aren't going to say anything? So I just wish that we would get off this merry-go-round of, this particular girl is not agreeing with what Andy's doing, and then the other two backup sisters tell them to hush because they're being out of line and you're being an awful friend. But then when they learn that Andy's going through something awful that she's not telling them about because it proves Gary's BS, then all of a sudden the person that they were trying to push out of the group, or at least force into an apology, is the person who's in the right. And how many times are we going to have to sit through this? How many times? So Karen pretty much had the same mood as me. She got up and left. Sabrina got to go home too, and Danny's trying to stall because obviously she still doesn't want to go home with Preston, but the girls sniff it out and she's like, fine, I'll go home. All right, so then we go over to this. Okay, honestly, I'm looking at my notes now. Honestly, I felt like this scene was actually later in the episode, but it wasn't. But Zach and Fatima, after they had sex, it's still the same night. And she tells him that he should go home, but it's like, no, I just want to kick it with you. So I ain't doing all that. It's like, what are you talking about? It's awkward. She talks about how her ex, and she told Andy about this once, if I'm not mistaken, the fact that she hooked up with somebody, I believe, who had just gotten out of an engagement apparently, and this was the quote-unquote love of her life. And Friday she got dumped, and then Saturday he married the fiance, and that left her heartbroken, and she doesn't want to be in a situation like that ever again. And the whole situation, like being in the grocery store with Karen and the girls, I felt so small. I never want to feel that way again. This goes back to the video I posted a couple days ago about how season 3 is the worst season so far. And even if the back half of season 3 is spectacular, I still don't think that will save the first half, because somebody told me that the trailer for next week's episode did say there's only one episode left before the mid-season finale. So I do believe that episode 11 on August 18th will be the mid-season finale of Sistas season 3. So there's 11 episodes after that. Even if each of those episodes are a 10 out of 10, I still don't feel that will be strong enough to save this season as a whole. I would probably have to divide it into like 3.0 and 3.5, because 11 solid episodes isn't enough to save a season of 11 terrible episodes. Why do we have to deal with this every time? Fatima says no, Zach says yes, and they have sex. And it's not like there's a difference, but, and I'm not saying Zach is in the right here, but there's a difference between forcing yourself on someone or getting them to admit their feelings. It's kind of weird with Zach and Fatima because fans love them together, but when you look at the context, what Zach is doing to Fatima is kind of not so different than what Jacoby did when he went over to Sabrina's house late at night and ended up going in on her on the counter. It's like she would say no, but he would keep kissing her neck until she quote unquote gave in. But with Zach, I think it's because he knows Fatima well enough by now that she's really speaking out of a hurt place as opposed to what she's really feeling. But hey, it's up to interpretation there. So either way, she's like, I don't want you, I don't want this, and tells him to leave again. And basically, it's interesting because I love how Zach is actually willing to hear Fatima out in regards to talking about her ex, because anytime he tried to bring up his ex, she would shut that down automatically. And of course, this was during the time where they were just kind of hooking up and before she admitted to having feelings. So there's obviously a difference going on here. But on top of that, Zach is pretty much in the mindset of, look, you're looking not to trust anybody, but I'm effed up. You don't have to trust me. Tell me something I don't already know. And it's like, she kind of got out of that attitude mode and handed him a book of affirmations. And he's like, no, I love it better when it's coming off your lips. And, she goes into more dialogue. But what Zach says, I really love, because see, that's what I like about you. You don't talk down to me. You talk to me. And it's great because even though he didn't bring up the name Karen, we as a fan base knows exactly where he's coming from when he says that kind of thing to Fatima. So from there, she keeps saying she wants to go out, but he goes, just kiss on the neck, and then she's like, okay, fine. So he goes down on her, and that's the end of the scene. But overall, I just feel like Tyler doesn't really write these scenes consistently, because this is no different than when Zach was quote unquote sneaking out the next morning, and then Fatima went into full on bitch mode for no apparent reason at all. And now you have the same thing where, okay, these two have apparently amazing sex, and all of a sudden, I don't want you, I don't want this. And it's like, well, why do you keep saying that if you willingly engage in sexual activity with Zach? Because if nothing else, it makes Fatima look bad. And I'm not saying Fatima should just get over it and, not allow her past to affect, her future relationships. I feel like we can all relate to that. And even Zach brings it up. But the difference is, him and Karen just broke up recently. And I mean, for like the umpteenth time that looks seemingly permanent, along with him having sex with her in the office like a day or two ago. But with Fatima, it's been a while. But sometimes you can have a heart, even if it's been like years ago, if the heartbreak was bad enough, yeah, that can keep you from trusting anybody. So I understand her reluctance, not to mention her confliction of how she feels about Zach, considering this seems to be the first time she's had legit feelings for anybody in quite a while. But I hope these scenes don't continue to be the same old thing, because if so, no matter how amazing the sex scenes are, it doesn't make the scenes good, because of the fact that, well, you're just going to keep going around in circles. And I don't want to see that, because of what happens towards the end of the episode. I'm thinking to myself, I wish Zach would have just left when she told him and Hayden to leave, because imagine him waking up the next morning. I don't know if he would be able to stay in a hotel, because he only has like what, $100 in his bank account. Remember, this is prior to the phone call the next morning, because he deposited 20 grand. He only left 100 in his account in order to keep it open, while the other money was put in the stock, and maybe he had a few dollars on him, so maybe he could have afforded like a very cheap motel or stuff in his truck. But either way, Zach, this scene just proved that Zach is most likely just better off on his own, if Fatima's still in the mindset of allowing what these girls think of her to influence her more than her feelings for Zach. Now, I understand though, because she told all the other girls, specifically, like Karen, that her and Zach are done. So yeah, if she slowly becomes one of the girls, but then they find out that her and Zach aren't off, then yeah, that's going to look really shady. But I just wish that she wouldn't let these quote unquote friends make her feel bad, as opposed to focusing on Zach, who makes her feel good. So I feel like I said before, it feels like slowly but surely Fatima's losing a bit of that that made her a fan favorite character. Now look, I've only talked about the first couple scenes, and we're almost 20 minutes into the video. All right, so let's keep it going. All right, we go over to I believe it's the gay bar, and it says Proud on the front, so I believe it's called the Proud Gay Bar. Maurice is dancing. He gets a drink. He's talking with the bartender. Q comes over there to greet him, thanks him for the pep talk and sorry for the way he responded. And in order to thank him, they go back to Maurice's place. Okay. So we go over to Gary and Andy, and he doesn't want to talk about the situation and asks why she lied. And she pretty much pulled a lawyer move, but that ain't going to fly. It's like, I didn't lie, I just withheld information. A lie of omission. But it's the same damn thing. And out of nowhere, Gary's like, you know what, I'm just going to the gym. You going to the gym at this hour? I'm going to the gym. So we just up and leave. So, I mean, I've said it before, I'm not the biggest Gary fan, but Andy did lie. It's just like when she was telling Fatima, who said this was a bad idea. I said I was going out with the girls, and I am going out with the girls. So instead of going to the Carlisle Hotel restaurant, I'll have Robin meet me at the location where the girls' night is. So technically, I'm on girls' night. Robin just happens to be in the same place. So, I mean, I don't know what's worse, the fact that Gary didn't trust her because he showed up unannounced and busted her party, or the fact that Andy straight up lied. So just because Andy lied, but Gary had his ex-wife try to kill them both, Gary's lied to her multiple times, same difference. A lie is a lie. But, if Andy can't have her cake and eat it too. She can't even have a brownie at this point. She needs to just make up her mind. Either cut her losses with Gary. Honestly, don't even see why she's still with Gary to begin with. Or, work it out with him, even though he's working out through a lot of crap himself. So we go over to another ridiculous scene. So apparently it's 11 p.m. And that's not late according to Jacoby. He's knocking on Sabrina's door. And he wants to apologize, and she's like, go away. It's like, look, even if I had to call the police to have them stand next to me, I just want to let you know how sorry I am. And she opens the door. I don't know what's dumber, when she was having sex with Jacoby in the kitchen and then went to the door to answer it when it was Calvin knocking, or if in this situation the guy who literally stood in the bank and screamed your name out for sexual harassment comes over to your place late at night, again unannounced, and you open the door to let him in. Like, that letter, you could have just slid it underneath the door. You could have left it at the door. But she decided to open the door, let him in. This is basically the little piggy letting the big bad wolf into the house. And you could say, hey, stay there. Stay there. Put the letter on the thing. Don't just like, yeah, this is a letter, you know, apologizing and saying you did nothing wrong and I'm sorry. I'm not saying Jacoby wasn't wrong for what he did in the bank with the whole sexual harassment thing. But I'm still just... Sabrina isn't a saint. I mean, at most, yeah, send Jacoby home for the day, let him explain his case to like the higher ups, but I still don't say he deserved to get fired or suspended. You know, I just feel like, you know, fine, if you want to send him home or quote unquote temporarily suspend him until this situation is resolved. But overall, I feel like Jacoby got the short end of the stick here. And I'm not vouching for him in regards to the sexual harassment stuff, the Me Too, but I mean everything leading up to that. So I feel like, you know, he even says, hey, can you apologize to Maurice for me? I'll think about it. You just need to go and never come back. Oh, okay. So part of me thinks this could be Jacoby's swan song on the Sistas series, and he'll be, you know, in the All the Queen's Men series, because he's going to be playing a different character there. So if this was the last Jacoby scene, okay, even though I still feel like, you know, he was done wrong in the long run. Alright, so then we get to yet another weird scene of a person coming inside of an apartment that they really don't belong into. Maurice and Q greet Calvin as he's chilling on the couch, and, you know, he kind of jokes about how you might want to leave your headphones on because it's going to be a loud night, you know, the way I moan and scream. And, you know, they go into his room and Maurice's like, I want romance and whatnot, I want kissing. And Q isn't about that. Pretty much he's like more straightforward and to the point. And he drops his pants and Maurice is impressed, like, oh, I just dropped something. He goes down and you know what happens next. But let's talk about the context of the scene. Like Calvin rightfully said, so the guy who stole from me and ruined my bank accounts isn't in jail but standing right there. And all of a sudden he's allowed back in this place. And, you know, I mean, I get it. Calvin was actually rightfully aggressive, even though some people I saw online were like, you know what, I would have threw his ass out myself like Uncle Phil threw out Jazz. But I feel like if nothing else, you know, if I were Calvin, I would just up and leave, because of the fact that Maurice clearly has no respect for me. If it's almost as if, you know, let's say me and my roommate, you know, back in the apartment, me and a girl had a falling out and she's gone, she never comes back. He invites her back over so they can kick it without, you know, taking my feelings into consideration. But in this case, we're talking about a thief who stole from Calvin and almost ruined him, crippled him financially, leading to his viral knockout screen moment in the bank and a lot of, you know, chips to fall in the wrong direction. So not a big Maurice fan based off that. And I thought that was a messed up move. Now, I think it was in a recent episode, or what? I think that was when Sabrina was talking to Maurice about how, no, Q isn't arrested. He's just, you know, reminds me of when I was a 14-year-old being kicked out of the house and everything. He just needs to be pointed in the right direction. If you wanted to go that route, I can respect that, but respect Calvin. You know, just the fact that, you know, you would bring Q over there unannounced and whatnot. I'd rather see the quote-unquote redemption of Q as opposed to just Maurice in a messy situation, because I felt like that was just a disrespectful move to Calvin overall. Alright, so we go over to the next morning. Danny's sneaking out just like Zach was at Fatima's apartment, and Preston wakes up. You know, he comes in, it's like, wait, you didn't come to bed? No, I slept on the couch. Why are you leaving this early? You're awake before I am, and I wake up before the roosters. Oh yeah, I'm going in early to work some overtime. It's like, okay, and I'm working a double. For what? Yeah, I need some money for this and that. And then she's like, well, hey, if you need some money, I can go over to Yeehaw or Cowboy Express or whatever, because she's like, no, I'm independent, and yo, you paid 3 months rent. And this scene was, I don't know what was cringier, this scene or the Maurice and Q scene, because of the fact that this is the same woman who was begging for a man, gets a good one, she's self-destructing the relationship, and then as soon as, I swear I wouldn't blame Preston if he was gone by the time she came back from that quote-unquote double shift, because then she'll be crying about how men ain't shit and everything, and it's like, you did this to yourself, Danny. You treat this man, I saw somebody on Twitter say this, the way that Danny treats Preston is the same way Andy should treat Gary. See how long he'll stay with that. Basically, the poor guy just wants to check in. It's like, hey, we usually talk, well, yeah, me going back to the cows, but we got a new contract. There's a bull. And then, she's just dismissive of him, doesn't care about his, day or anything, and pretty much neglecting him. It's not his name on the lease, but he paid rent for 3 months, and it's almost like he's being disrespected in his own house. So essentially, it's just like Danny is being like Gary. It's just that toxic kind of relationship where the person who is the tormentor tries to make the other good person in a relationship feel like they're the one in the wrong, because anytime Danny gets a bit abrasive when Preston's just literally trying to ask, how was your day, baby? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this, I didn't mean to do that. I guess you're right, I do talk about this too much. So basically she's putting Preston at fault, and he ain't do a damn thing wrong. But it was kind of a funny moment where she leaves and is like, well, how does she know about Cowboy but not about Yeehaw? It's like the same thing. Again, it's like, just her making a mockery of, his culture and everything. Yet if there's even a hint of unknowingly disrespect towards black people, all of a sudden Preston's a racist. So Preston, pack up your stuff. Calvin and Preston, Zach, all y'all, both. Calvin needs to pack up from Maurice's apartment. Preston needs to get everything and leave Danny's apartment. Zach needs to get up and leave Fatima's apartment, Karen's house, whatever. They all need hell. I would be cool. Like I've said, Calvin, I could be done with Calvin. I would be cool with Preston, Zach, and Calvin getting like, a 3-bedroom place somewhere and just chilling, because of the fact that these women, or well, in Maurice, but we go over to the salon, and Karen walks in. Pam has some bad news. Some people were like, Karen handed Pam the purse and then the credit card. I'm just going to assume we'll never find out who was the person who used the credit card. All we know, it was a client of Karen's, and that's it. But basically Pam delivers the bad news that Isaiah left, took a bunch of the clients with him, and he has lower prices than Karen. Pretty much 50% off specials and everything, which is bad because remember, Andy was a major contributor to the finances for Karen to buy the salon to begin with, and she would work hard in order to pay her back. But I know somebody even jokes like, what Karen tripping on about being a slow Friday? That's her busy day. There are barely any clients in there as it is. Touche. All right, so from there, she tells Pam to, find out every single client that was taken away by Isaiah. Well, how I know, girl, you knows you'll find out one way or another. Then Aaron comes in and, Pam warns her that, yeah, she's in a bad mood. And she even brings up the whole, yeah, I know it was rough for you the last time you were in here. Her and Zach were in the back, and so, oh yeah, I'm sorry. So then she goes to quote unquote work, and, Karen and Aaron talked. It's like, 7:30 tonight, meet up at your place, dinner or movie, and we'll see what happens. But basically he apologizes for leaving in the middle of the night. Not only that, he hasn't even called or contacted her since then. So what's it been, like a day and some change? But from there, he pretty much says, hey, I had a good time, so we can do it again if you like it. Basically he's leading into, yeah, we can have sex, it doesn't matter. And it's kind of funny. Pam, I know some people were annoyed at Pam, but she did have some funny lines on Aaron's way out in regards to, just the dynamic between Karen, Aaron, and the whole situation with Zach. So, yeah, she's a loudmouth, but she does have some one-liners here and there. Like, there are some jokes that hit. Sure, there are a lot of misses, but when Pam lands a joke, it does hit. All right, so then we go over to the next morning, Maurice and Calvin. Maurice is apparently in love, and Calvin's mad because the whole situation about it being super loud. And then even when Maurice tries to throw his two dads in his face, like, well, they would pretty much keep it behind closed doors. It would never be in front of me. And on top of that, you need to just stop with the jokes. You're just joking about everything because you're lonely. And then Maurice just says, oh yeah, you're just projecting the whole Sabrina thing. And it's like, nope, this ain't got nothing to do with her. And I like how there was some truth in what Calvin was saying, and the fact that, well, Maurice is just latching on to Q because it's quick, fast, and a hurry. It's basically him settling for a Hot Pocket instead of a DiGiorno. Put it in the oven, let it cook for a while. And you just think with Q is probably just going to end up in a lot of pain, where what should have been nothing more than kind of like a mentor-mentee relationship, all of a sudden you're in love, and yeah, he's going to rob your heart just like a thief in the night, pun intended. So we go over to Andy calling Gary, and it goes to voicemail. She then calls Karen, and apparently she tries to hold out, but Karen sees right through that crap and is like, okay, fine. Apparently he went to the gym but never came home, and he actually does come in, so she gets off the phone, and he apologized. Well, he says, hey, I was out thinking and whatnot at the gym for 6 hours. Yeah, so I guess this is kind of weird. Again, I might be thinking too hard, but I know Jacoby went over to Sabrina's at like 11, and then that scene happened after Gary left Andy's. So wouldn't that mean it's like 5 o'clock in the morning? I mean, Preston did say that Danny woke up before him, and I don't know how, well, I mean, some salons might open at like 6 in the morning, so Karen getting there early makes sense, I guess, but whatever. So in any case, he's been doing a lot of thinking and talking with his therapist. Yeah, talking. And apparently she wants to come over to the apartment to talk with him and Andy after work, and she's like, yeah, fine, yeah, that's okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to shower and get to work and we can talk afterwards. So she's like, this is some bullshit. And I'm like, Andy, you're doing this to yourself. I don't feel bad. But then we get to the final scene. Zach wakes up in the morning. He gets a call from the bank, and he's like, $787. Look, that's a major freaking loss. That's all I got in my bank account. But then the woman on the end is like, no, I just want to advise you, you need to sell your stock because it's up to $787,000. And that was the end of the episode. And I gotta say, wow, this was a roller coaster ride. Like I said, I honestly didn't expect this video to be that long, but the first two scenes, with the whole girls' night and then Zach and Fatima, that was a bulk of conversation right there. But then there were other scenes that I just feel like it's the same repetitive thing. True, the haves and the have-nots had the same problem, but Sistas is still a fresh series. Yeah, it's in season 3, but at the same time, it's only been out for not even 2 years yet, but already you can see the stench of staleness because, on the video I did about the show not being as good anymore this season, a lot of people agree. I'm surprised because I felt like I would be in the minority on that. But overall, I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees that there's a lot of repetitive storytelling and the fact that it doesn't seem like the story's going anywhere, even when it seems like, Zach's got a major win, or, oh, here's a new guy Andy might choose over Gary, or, whatever the case is. You just get the feeling that within the next 2 or 3 episodes, it's all going to fall apart. And then we'll just go back to square one, do it all over again. So I just hope that there's only 2 episodes left before the mid-season break. Hopefully the back half is stronger than the first half. That's really all I got to say there. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is a 4 out of 10 too low for the episode? Do you disagree completely and feel, Jeremy, this is a great episode? I don't know what you're talking about. And for the Zatima fans, could you agree that their scenes, while hot at times, have been getting a bit lukewarm? Because how many times will Fatima just say, I don't want you, before Zach is like, you know what? All right, fine. And I don't blame him. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next video.